this evening. Acts chapter 28. We are on the last chapter, and this is the last part of what is recorded in Paul's life. Up to this point, Paul has been on a ship, actually a couple of different ships, one from Caesarea and one from Myra. Then he got caught and delayed in a terrible storm. They made it through safely. They put anchors near as they indicated that they were getting close to an island. The next morning, they saw like a little creek bed going up there. They thought that might be a good idea to go bring the ship in closer. And when they did, the two seas were meeting together. It violently sucked the front of the ship down into the ground, and the back end snapped, and everybody swam to the shore of this island where Gilligan and the castaways are. But we are number 4, the serpent. Number 4, the serpent. Letter A, the people of the island. The people of the island. Now, have you ever looked at somebody, or whether it was a visitor in the church or somebody on the street or at your job, whatever, and you first have an impression about them, but all of a sudden when you get to see them a little bit longer or you find out more information about them, your opinion of them changes. That's exactly what's going to happen here. They don't know Paul, but Paul's going to come on the island, and they're going to first look on him as a murderer. That's number 1 in your notes. They're going to look on him as a murderer. Now, as we read the text, keep in mind at that time period, and even before that, and even to some extent, a little bit even nowadays, that they had this opinion. In fact, think of Job's friends. They had this opinion that if something bad happens in your life, you must have done something bad. And in fact, that's what the Job's friends kept accusing him of over and over again, several chapters. Well, they're going to think this of Paul. Whether you call it karma or what comes around goes around, whatever phrase you're going to use, they have this mentality here. Let's look at verse number 1. And when they were escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita, and the barbarous people showed us no little kindness. Now let me stop there and comment on 2 things. Later it's actually going to use the word barbaric or barbarians. When we nowadays hear the word barbaric or barbarian, we kind of in our mind have this concept of a caveman or somebody that's not civilized. Me man, you woman, type of thing. Or, that type, eating raw meat or, we just have this caveman mentality. But that's not what it means. It just means non-Greek. And so they're barbarous people. Now, I love the way Luke writes. Luke, a doctor, has used several literary tools at his disposal. One of which is this next phrase, showed us no little kindness. Why didn't he just say, showed us great kindness? I mean, it's the same thing. If it's not little, that means it's big. But he uses this literary tool. In fact, I began to look it up. In Acts chapter 12, it says there's no small stir. And it was talking about a civil disturbance going on. In Acts 15, he says there's no small dissension because there was a bickering going on. And then Acts chapter 19, no small gain. That's where those silversmiths were were getting their money because of making idols and such. But he uses these phrases, no small, no small, no small, and it just means the opposite. Today we would say like, he's no dummy, or mama didn't raise no fool, something like that. And it just means the opposite of what you're truly saying. So no little kindness, for they, these barbarous people, kindled a fire and received us every one. Now, at first glance, if you don't know the story, you would think, oh no, they're barbarians, carnivores. They're gonna have us for dinner, because it says they received every one of us, and they kindled a fire. They're like, oh, we're the dinner. But that's not what they're doing. Because of the present rain and because of the cold. So really, humanitarian aid is what they're providing. Shelter for the people that just swam in. And keep in mind, at the time of the year, the water's cold. They have in the previous chapter, they had passed the fast. So we're in the fall, the winter period, and so the water's getting pretty chilly. So it's not like you're bathing out there doing the backstroke and stuff. You're trying to get to the shore as fast as possible, like this. So they're doing that. Now, I love verse 3. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks. I don't think I've ever thought about that before. I just read it as a part of the story, but it dawned on me that Paul was doing that. Not the 275 other people on the ship, not the other people, but Paul. Now, that stirs in my heart because I don't want to ever get to a point as a pastor or a person, as a husband, whatever, sit there and say, I'm too big to do that little job there. I'm not cleaning toilets. I'm not picking up sticks. They can pick up sticks. Paul was doing that. He was a servant. And may God help us to be servants. And he laid them on the fire. There came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. Now, all of us act differently to bugs, snakes, spiders, things like that. One of my daughters, not the other one, but one of my daughters would have had heebie-jeebies. I mean, God! She would have just took off running, screaming, everything else. My other daughter would be like, oh, poof, like that. Night and day difference. But here, all of a sudden, this snake comes out of the fire and fastens on his hand. Verse 4. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast. Now keep in mind the word venomous is italicized, which means the King James translators added that just to add context to it because of what's going to happen. But it wasn't in the original. But this venomous beast hang on his hand. They said among themselves, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom, though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. Now, what's interesting, I don't know that this is true, but it is interesting. I read it in several resources that Zeus, if you're mythology, Zeus had 3 daughters. One of them was named, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, Diko or Dike or something like that, D-I-K-O or something like that. She is supposed to be the goddess of justice. The reason why I bring that out, because that's the Greek word for vengeance. And whether Luke purposely used that because of that mentality in that day or not, I don't know. But nevertheless, they believe that, oh, he must have done something bad before because something bad's happening to him now. And so that's what they're thinking. They immediately thought he was a murderer. But they changed their mind. Number 2, they finally look on him as a god. Look with me at verse 5. And he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Howbeit, they looked when he should have swollen. I don't know if on the fire they were roasting marshmallows or popping popcorn, just kind of waiting to see if he's going to drop dead or not. I don't know, but obviously they were waiting, and there was no swelling. Nor had he fallen down dead suddenly. But after they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. Now, hold your place here. Go back with me to the book of Mark, please. Mark chapter 16. Jesus has been crucified and buried. He rose again, and he's appearing in this text to the 11. You see that in verse 14. Now, by the way, in your notes it says Mark 16, verse 7 and 8. Correct that, it's 17 and 18. I'll blame it on my keyboard. Jesus is telling them, these 11, that the signs, wonders, and miracles that I did, you are going to experience these so that people can look at you, and those signs, miracles, and wonders will validate the message that you are speaking and the man. So they will believe the message because you're doing these signs, wonders, and miracles. So as long as the apostles were living, these miracles were going on prominently. And so that's what we see in the book of Acts. Look at verse 17. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils. They shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So he begins to mention some of these miraculous things that they're going to be experiencing. And I will say, now we go back to Acts chapter 28. In this chapter, there's two recorded sign gifts that are done, and this is one of them. And so you begin to see in the Bible the tapering off of these sign gifts. Now, John would be alive still for a couple of more decades, but Paul is using some of these gifts, and obviously he's not dead because of a snake. So that was a miracle right there. All right, so letter A is the people on the island. Letter B, the politician on the island. The politician. Number one, the friendly. Look with me at verse 7. In the same quarters, now all that means is in the same neighborhood, the same area, were possessions of the chief man of the island. And all that means is he had land, he owned land near where they shipwrecked. He had possessions there. And he is the highest ranking official, most likely Roman government planted. That's why I call him politician, on the island. But his name was Publius, who received us and lodged us 3 days courteously. So not only did the people that helped them out show humanitarian aid, but this nearby resident, who happened to be the chief of the island, lodged them and was courteous to them. By the way, if heathens or unsaved people can be courteous and kind, what do you think a Christian ought to show? You know what I mean? John Fisher just told me a little bit ago, he says, "Pastor, you were at Farm and Fleet on Monday." I go, "Yeah." He said, "You walked right by me and didn't say hi." I said, "I didn't see you." He said, "Pastor, you were right there." I said, "I didn't see you, man. I'm so sorry." He said, "You must have been on a mission." I said, and I said, "Man, I didn't mean to be unkind." And it wasn't intentional. But anyway, we see the friendly. Number two, the father. Well, Publius had a daddy, and shut up, Josh. Yeah, puberty. It's Publius, yeah. Verse 8, and it came to pass that the father of Publius lay sick of a what? Fever. So that's number 3. We see the friendly, we see the father, we see the fever. Now, we're not told exactly what's going on, except he has a physical condition that he's got a fever. It does go on a little bit more here to explain a little bit more. Look at verse number 8 again. He lay sick of a fever and of a bloody flux. That's number 4, the flux. It's the Greek word dysenterion, it's where we get dysentery. He's got severe blood loss, severe diarrhea going on. Now, think in those days, they must have had some wild ideas of what was going on and scary to them. Not just regular diarrhea, and I'm not trying to be graphic, but severe, where blood is coming out. And he's got a fever as well. So obviously something's going on in the inside. They knew it. He was sick. Well, what happened? Verse 8, to whom Paul entered in and prayed, laid his hands on him, and healed him. And so because of that, it's now going to open up a door for others to be helped. Number 5, the friends. Once Publius finds out that his dad's healed, word gets out quickly because Publius is the chief guy. And so people are texting each other, they're emailing, getting the word out as soon as possible and as fast as possible that there needs to be, anybody sick needs to bring them to Paul. And so they get all their friends. They're not going to bring enemies. Verse number 9. So when this was done, others also, which had diseases in the island, came and were healed. Now, I don't know the population of the island. I didn't look it up before I came. I wish I would have. But I don't know how many were sick. But nevertheless, let's just say a handful. I mean, that would literally affect families. So it's not just 3, 4, 5 people. I mean, families are involved. And obviously, anytime someone gets sick or someone gets healed or whatever, it affects families. So the flux, the friends, and then number 6, the food. Now, to be honest with you, the word food is a bad word to use because it's much, much more than food. But to match the outline, I used the word food. Clearly it's food, but there's more. Verse 10, who also, these people, also honored us with many honors, and when we departed, they laded us with such things as were necessary. Remember, they lost everything on the ship, and so they're giving them natural provisions, including food. But that phrase right there, we also honored us with many honors. There's 2 times or 2 ways that is described. One is honors, giving them respect. But secondly, it could also mean an honorarium, a financial gift. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but obviously they respected him, and they certainly gave him physical things, but whether they gave him financial things, the text does not necessarily say that. So, but nevertheless, they gave him a bunch of things, which is a blessing. But number 5, the saints. The saints. Now, we're going to get through this section, and that'll be it for tonight. And then we'll get to number 6 next week. All right. Letter A, 3 months. 3 months. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think about why it's 3 months. Look at verse 11. And after 3 months, we departed in a ship of Alexandria, which had wintered in the isle, whose sign was Castor and Pollux. Now, I'll explain all that in just a second, but why do you think they had to stay there for 3 months for? Winter. Yep. They had to stay there. In fact, it was so dangerous, that's why they got shipwrecked, and just gone through all the storm right here. So when the winter was over, then they could set sail. So there was another ship wintering there, staying there, and they were going to get out. So this is the third ship that they're going to get on. Caesarea, Myra, and now at this Malta or Melita place, they're going to catch this one. Now, do you remember last week I mentioned, honey, I just realized I don't have my wallet with me. I drove here illegally. Last week I talked about ships back in those days sometimes would paint or carve figures on the front of their ship. Castor and Pollux are twin gods, according to mythology. And they're the ones that would favor or oversee sailors. And so that's all that Castor and Pollux is. So they're getting ready to take another one, but it was 3 months. So we're looking in the February time period now because it happened in October, November. So not only letter A was 3 months, but letter B, 3 days. Now, go back a couple of pages and look at your map. Look all the way to the far left, because that's the island that they landed on. On the map, it's called Malta. In the Bible, it's called Melita. But depending on which map you look at it, it's different. Notice as they leave, notice the route or the route that they're going to take. There's a couple of cities that the Bible, we're getting ready to read, but I want you to see how they're going to go. There's Syracuse and Rhegium, and then they're going to go up there a little north. Right above the word Italy, it says Forum of Appius. Do you see that? All right, so notice all of those. Let's go back to our notes. Now look at verse 12. And landing at Syracuse, we tarried there 3 days. All right, so letter A was 3 months. Letter B is 3 days. Letter C, 3 taverns. 3 taverns. Now, I know what Carl's thinking because that's just the way Carl thinks when I mention tavern. Verse 13, and from thence we fetched a compass and came to Rhegium. I should have looked up pronunciation of that to be exact, but anyway, and after 1 day the south wind blew, and we came the next day to Puteoli, where we found brethren and were desired to tarry with them 7 days. And so we went toward Rome. They're not at Rome, but they're going toward Rome. So notice how even after 3 months on the island, they're not going real fast. There's a day here, 3 days here, a little while here. And here at this place, they're staying 7 days. But look at verse 15. And from thence, when the brethren heard of us, they came to meet us as far as Appii Forum and the 3 taverns, whom, when Paul saw, he thanked God and took courage. Now, I don't know if you remember, but way back, several chapters, Paul was in Greece for 3 months, during which time he wrote the book of Romans, which is to Rome. And then he said, in the very first chapter, he says, hey, I'm going to go to Jerusalem first, but man, I'm coming to see you. I'm looking forward to it. But then he was getting ready to take a ship and there was a plot against him, so he decided not to go that way, so he went by the land route, and then he wanted to make it to Jerusalem by a certain festival that was happening. And he gets down to Jerusalem and he gets caught and he's in prison, these false trials in Caesarea for 2 years, and then the traveling. So it's been almost about 4 years since Paul wrote that saying, I want to come to you. And so now he's getting closer and closer and closer to Rome. What's interesting is the phrase, they came to meet us. In the New Testament, that's the same phrase as, it's when you send out dignitary or somebody really important to greet you, to bring you back to the city. That's the same word that when it talks about the Lord coming in the air to meet us, to bring us back. So I just think it's awesome that Luke happened to choose those words to indicate all of that. And Three Taverns is just like a market town that people stopped on the road. They just named it that. And then verse 16, last verse. And when we came to Rome, the centurion delivered the prisoners to the captain of the guard, but Paul was suffered or allowed to dwell by himself with the soldier that kept him. And so Paul finally arrives in Rome. And God's told him he arrived there. And he's been eager and anticipating getting there, and now he's finally there. So next week, we're going to get into a little bit more technical jargon and such, but I'm looking forward to that as well. So mark your place there. Any closing comments about the travel so far? Nothing? Oh, yes.
Was number 4 serpent or serpent? They both kind of fit, but I couldn't hear.
Number 4, the serpent or snake.
Yeah, okay, thank you. When you talked about it being a serpent, it was,
Oh,
I wasn't sure.
any others I miss? Usually Candace is on the ball, and if I miss something, she's like, she corrects me right away. So I assume that if there's no comment that I haven't made an error. All right. Father God, thank you so much once again for the gathering of your people. Look forward to Sunday coming up. And Lord, every time we get a chance to, Lord, not only be together to share our faith, share our love, to encourage one another, to provoke one another to good works. Lord, I look forward to it. Thank you for these faithful folks. Bless them, please, each one of them. Be with Lori as she travels tomorrow. Be with Barb as she has a treatment tomorrow. And thank you again for being a God that knows what we're going through and has promised to be with us always. We love you so much. In Christ's name, amen.